comment from one of my viewers, subscribers I believe. I mentioned to the fellow who left it, a fellow lady, I don't know, the name of the channel is Deaf Josh, so I'm just going to say, Josh, here's the reply to that. Here's the comment. Is there any advice you would have for how you design your forms of your bushes and trees on the fly? Is it just practice from years of drawing, or is it just somewhat random shapes? Well, it's a combination of things. Sometimes the shapes are random, but those are smaller incidental, sort of what I would call fillers between the main features of some of the objects in my painting. They make up part of the subject matter. What I will do is, I often have some paper and a pencil in the car with me. Sometimes I have, if I'm going to go for a drive specifically to go and look, at trees, rocks, forms. Don't think of them as trees or rocks. Think of them as shapes more than anything. And I'll try to sort of catalog it really quickly with a sketch, just very quickly, very roughly. Not to capture the details, but to capture the general attitude, the general feeling of the thing that I want to use for future information. It's good resource material to have some of that stuff with you. Some of that stuff that you can put it on file somewhere and look it up later. I've become pretty proficient at just looking at something pretty thoroughly, and it stays in my mind for a long time. That's probably mostly because I've done it for my entire life. It's been in my nature. And yeah, when it comes to drawing, I have hundreds and hundreds of hours of practice. Not that I was intentionally doing it to practice, but I was trying to draw ever since I was, maybe this tall. I was drawing. I love to draw. My mom was constantly saying to me, if I got bored or started whining about having nothing to do, she would say, "Why don't you draw?" And that kind of stuck with me, and that has helped. I have so many drawings under my belt, it's ridiculous, from the time I was a child until now. So that helps. And if you're going to paint objects that are representational, even as an impressionist, you need to know how to draw those objects. And you can't get the idea, if you find yourself sitting there in front of your canvas or your paper and saying, "Now, what does a tree look like again? I have to, you will tend to fall into that trap of, oh yeah, a tree is a ball with a trunk. A tree, an evergreen is a triangle. Okay, at its most rudimentary form, that may be so, roughly, but that's not what makes a tree interesting. That belongs on a Hallmark Christmas card. It doesn't belong in an actual fine art type painting, right? So, I just found a pad here with a couple of pictures on it. They're not pictures. They're not even compositions. When you're traveling around, or when you're looking around, when I go looking around, I don't look for a good composition at all. It's not that often that nature provides you with the perfect composition. You almost always have to change it a little bit, balance it a little bit, imbalance it a little bit. But you'll have to modify it. So what I'll do is I'll usually find one item that I really find interesting. It'll be a tree, a particular tree, or a couple of trees, or a group of trees, but I'll keep it simple and I'll stay with the one sort of shape. It could be a structure of rock, a nodule, or a small promontory, or something like that. It could be the notion of a vista. It could be a certain shape on a horizon and the way the sun hits it, or of course I'll draw it as a silhouette and then just sort of bear in mind what turned me on to it. So try to identify what you find interesting about that shape, log it down on something or in here, and then try to recreate the attitude of that form, the feeling of that form, when you get home, and you can scratch it on paper, or if you can remember it, then wait until you've got a canvas. to put it on. Also, I look at other artists' work and see how they make their shapes and their forms. And years ago, well, yeah, when I started out, I found a lot of different painters that I just loved the way they managed the handling of their shapes, and it really came down to the technique of their painting that allowed them to come up with these certain shapes. Yeah, so, you know, you stand on the shoulders of the people who came before you. There's no question about that. That's why I've said before too, nobody's self-taught. You always glean information from other people, whether you do it consciously or not. But that's helped me. And see, okay, get back to this thing. This is nothing. It's nothing. It's just a thought that I had, and there's nothing to it. It's just a couple of trees and the way the rock shape shows up below those trunks, the way the one trunk is curved, the attitude of the greenery on the top of the trunks, you know, sort of just the feel of it. These aren't drawings for anybody else or to be completed and made, you know, to the best of my ability. They're just ideas and notions for my own reference. Look at that scratchy thing, you know? There's really nothing to it. But I did this one, and that was just sort of, I liked the feeling of it swirling down like this and cutting up. I liked it, but really what I was after was something slightly different. So I scratched out another one that I think is, yeah, this one is a little bit refined. I turned this into a little 8x10 panel, I think. Maybe about a year ago. Anyway, so you end up with things like that, and you can go back to them and look at them and go, oh yeah, I remember that day, or I remember where I was then, and I kind of liked what happened, so I'll use it on a painting. But yeah, those are little aids that you can use, but honestly, you have to do the work. You have to learn how to draw and look at those trees. It's not your ability to draw, it's the ability to observe. You know? And it's much easier for you to make an honest drawing that appears more natural of a tree if you go and you look at that tree and you're staring at it and you forget the fact that it's a tree. Think of it only as a shape. Because, boy, I remember there was something my dad said years ago. One of the reasons he liked to go out and paint plein air is because plein air, you're often sort of recording what you're seeing, and you tend to be more bold. You get back to your studio, and hours later, or whenever, days later, and you get in front of a painting, you don't have that courage anymore to lay in something that at first seems very strange. And so you get safer and safer and safer. You won't have that branch sticking out as far, or with a strange attitude towards it, or a strange twist, or, you know, a trunk that grows up a little bit and then takes a turn. You become more afraid of doing those things. But if you're on site, painting, plein air, or sketching, or if you take photographs of it and drag it home, it's like, yeah, well, there it is. That's natural, you know? These oddities and anomalies. That's what makes nature beautiful. If all the trees were just a bunch of poles, well, you know, sure, granted there are paintings that stress a number of, like, lodgepole pine trees and what have you. But what I'm speaking of is in general, don't be afraid to make your trees look anomalous, make them look a little strange. And if you have trouble doing that with your imagination, get out there. Get out there. Don't be afraid. Go look at actual nature. I've had a lot of comments over the years. Oh well, this can't be done on a painting. You know, the sky always reflects the sky is always reflected in the water, and comments like that. It's like no. You know, you gotta wave at a slant like this towards you, and the light's from behind you. It's different than if the light's from over there, or the left or the right. You know, there's so many millions of different combinations of things. So it's really, I take one painting at a time, and I don't have a formula exactly for doing various things. Yes, a lot of my paintings are quite similar to each other. That's partly because that's the style I've developed. And it's partly because I like what I like. I like the subject matter. I like certain types of compositions more than others. Sometimes I'll dare to go off the beaten track a little bit, which is often interesting. Your chances of failure are a little bit higher because it's not something you revisit so often. But hey, don't you're not going to win if you're afraid to fail. You're never going to succeed. So anyway, that's my that's my blithering. I hope that helps, Josh. That's just where I'm coming from. I think everybody has their own way, but I think it's pretty undeniable that practice drawing. Practice drawing, but practice drawing actual objects, the real thing. Go out into nature. Take a little pad of paper like this. It's just tiny. This isn't even, that's not even, what is this, 6 by, I don't know, what is this actually? I like this size just for drawing because I can divide the page up. 5.5 by 8.5 inches. You know, and if I don't like the shape of the page, I'll draw a line down here, divide it, and if that's the shape I want, that's the shape I'll draw. If you draw it on a little thing like that, then you already have the beginnings of muscle memory in your hand and in your mind as to how you want that feeling the feeling of the shapes that you've made. Then it's even easier to transfer to canvas. Because of a lot of practice, I tend to draw like this. You know? That sort of thing, in sweeps, sometimes spasmodic sweeps, you know, but often that's what sort of gives the painting a little bit of magic, in my opinion. If I were to draw my drawing like this by resting my palm on the canvas and doing things like this, my goodness, the painting would be dead in its tracks. For one thing, it would take me forever to draw the thing. There'd be no movement to it because it would be tight, and you would see it's tight because my only motion for movement is here. Right? So your tendency is to tighten, and as you develop the painting, it just gets tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. Use your wrist. Don't touch that canvas. Use your wrist. Use your elbow. You can even use your shoulder. But doing this will be your enemy, unless you're drawing a drawing and you're making a very small drawing. For example, when it comes to realism, that's a little bit different. I'm only talking about what I do, landscapes. Hopefully as loose as I can make them. Well, really not as loose as I can make them because my technique is somewhat poster-like, somewhat fairy tale-like. But I don't want to tighten things up too much. I like that look of a painting seemingly, you know, it's a little sloppy, it's a little rough, it's a little rustic looking. I like that look, always have. All right. I'll be quiet about that. I am getting a little bit low on burnt sienna, so I was looking for something else to tint this canvas with, and I have a tube of an old tube of Winsor & Newton Cobalt Violet Hue, and I've put it on my palette. I've used it in paintings. It yields an okay purple if you don't know how to mix colors. I know how to mix colors. I prefer to mix my own purples. I'd rather take blue and red of some sort and make my purple, but I'm not going to mix it to death. I always like to leave it a little bit raw, so you might have one hair with a little bit of white, another 2 hairs with some alizarin crimson, and then 4 hairs of say cobalt blue. That makes a better purple if you don't mix the heck out of it than this paint, which is already pre-mixed. That's again a personal thing. So what I'm going to do, it's just a small tube. So I'll probably end up using the bulk of it, staining this canvas. I'm good with that, because I'm not using it on the paintings. That might be a bit generous, but that's okay. Better too generous than too cheap. And yeah, it'll be a purple tint. That'll be a little different. I know I've done it in the past, but I don't think I've done it on... I've used that as a tint in a video. I painted for years before I was doing any YouTube videos. Okay, that's a little more than half the tube on there. It's a good use of an old tube that I don't want to throw away. again, if we were in New York and I knew the right people and I had no conscience and I was a scammer, this painting would be finished. Beautiful piece of modern art. Don't you admire me for my cleverness in creating this? Holy mackerel. Okay. I'll stop being silly and sarcastic and nasty. Oh, look at that too. It's not even, it doesn't even have very good opacity. That's okay. For all the paint on there, it sure thins off and becomes transparent in a hurry. Then some paints are, you know, a little more opaque than others. You take something like sap green, for example, and it's sort of a waxy consistency, or can be. Again, it depends on the company, on the manufacturer that you're buying it from. But it can be kind of waxy and not so oily, and then you end up with when you thin it off to lay it on as a stain, or even in your overpainting, it's very translucent. Which, again, given if it suits your technique, then it's a fantastic paint. I'm not fond of it. I don't think it's really, or I don't. Maybe it is now. Maybe they've corrected things, but I don't think it's an overly stable color. I don't know. I haven't been keeping up with my homework on these things. A long time ago I settled into what I like and what I don't like, and being Dutch and grumpy, I'm very happy with what I've settled into. Yeah, even this feels a bit waxy actually. Oops. It's pretty stiff coming out of the tube, and I know that from using it on the canvas before, I like the consistency of it, but I found it to be just very weak. As I said, I don't remember what it was. If I took cobalt blue, I'm guessing I was taking cobalt blue, a hint of ultramarine blue, and a little bit of cad red to come up with this. Or maybe it was just cobalt blue and cad red or alizarin crimson. I don't remember. But I know that if I mixed my own purple to match this purple, or if I just used this purple out of the tube, my own purple was stronger, nicer and easier to manage, not as easy to kill. I found this to be really easy to kill. Run your brush through it once and it barely survives. Run your brush through it twice and it's gone. Or it might have even just been that it just turned to mud, you know, just got a little bit dirty. And I'm not a fan of that either. Now the amount of this that I put on, if I had put that volume, the same volume, but in ultramarine blue and burnt sienna on here, This stain would be much more opaque than it is now. Of that I am convinced. If I do this, my brush would have been ruined already. I really have to lay that foam. Really have to lay that foam almost parallel to the surface of the canvas. If it's perpendicular, the foam brush will never survive. Same goes for boar's hair brushes, which is really my go-to brush for most of my work. If you're perpendicular to your canvas and you're doing this a lot, you'll destroy that brush in no time at all. On the other hand, some techniques require that kind of scumbling thing, you know, and then, yeah, well, it is what it is. Brushes are there to be used. They're not there to sit in a glass case. I want to make sure I get all these thick bits off, these thick bits. I can't. They will never dry if I just leave them all the same. Okay, let's just do this now, I think. I think we're pretty safe. Keeping it unidirectional. This is a 24 by 36 inch canvas. More than likely, because I do like to mix it up a little bit. I get bored quickly. I don't want to do another forest scene. I just spent quite a bit of time on the last one using a brush. So my thoughts for this one are, I'm going to go back to the ocean or a lake or some rock structure, beach, shoreline, something a little more maybe windswept, you know, a little more sky. Those are my thoughts. I don't know. In a way, it's a pity because this blue underpinning is kind of a great complementary color for fall colors. You know, get into those yellows and oranges. Purple is a great it's a great base for that. That's okay. It'll work out well regardless of what I do over top. That's about it. That brush is finished. Give my pal a little wipe here. I think I'll put this canvas in the back room so that I don't have it in the studio where I can huff it while it dries the whole time. That'll be interesting. Yeah, might go with a knife, might go with the shoreline water scene. I always love rocky structure too. I always love rocky structure. For where I live, or where I used to live, which is close to here, oh yeah, and there's a lot of lakes here too. You see a lot of bare rock and really interesting strata. Okay, we're set to go on the next one. What's actually going to happen, whatever I just said, is probably wrong. I hope that helped, Josh. Hope you guys have a good day. We'll see you soon.